Howdy. Welcome to another episode of Canon Calls. This week, Christine Cohen is in to chat about her debut novel, The Winter King, and its release, which is today, November 19th. Go get the book, maybe get two of them. They make fantastic Christmas presents. And without further ado, meet Christine Cohen. Christine.
Hi.
Thanks for coming in. We put this together
Yesterday.
Yeah. You're going out of town.
I am.
Where are you going?
Walla Walla.
Oh, okay.
Little wine tasting before the...
That sounds awesome. I've never been to Walla Walla.
Really?
No.
Oh, it's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it on the list of places.
It is predominantly you go there for wine tasting.
Okay.
Like, that's their big...
And then there's a waterfall, maybe? No.
I don't think
Mountains. There's something else, right?
I'm not sure about landmarks. There's like the Marcus Whitman mission.
Okay.
Which I have not yet gone to see, but...
Okay. I just was thinking, what is it on Instagram that I see with Walla Walla above it? But maybe there's nothing.
Yeah.
But today, in reality, it's Tuesday. This is coming out Tuesday. And your book is released.
Great, yes.
It's out.
Yeah.
So hardbacks have
Wow.
arrived, hopefully. And they're being sent out. I feel like you've gone through I feel bad. I think you've gone through like a crash course of dates and scheduling.
This is what publishing is like.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot of moving parts. So making sure they all fit together, get it out. No, it's good.
And you wrote The Winter King.
Yes.
What's your elevator pitch for The Winter King?
Okay. I have done this many times. I've tried a lot of different approaches based on the responses I get from people, like the blank stares.
Yeah.
It's about a 16-year-old girl named Cora who is an outcast in a village, a Nordic village that's trapped in winter by a tyrannical god king. And her family falls on hard times, and she's trying to do anything to keep them alive. But in the course of doing that, she starts to uncover some secrets about the town that the elders are keeping from everyone.
Okay.
That would be, I guess, my pitch.
Love it. So go find it on Cannonball Books Facebook page. And you have a Facebook page, Christine Cohen.
Author. Underscore author.
Okay. So this wasn't your first start in publishing. Like
No.
You've been around the publishing world. Can you talk about that? Yeah, can you talk about
sure.
that?
Yeah, so it is my debut novel, but I've kind of had a very long, circuitous path to publishing. Taking it way back.
Yeah.
After I got married and my husband and I, we had our first baby, and she was 3 months old. We moved to a new city, and my husband went off to work really long hours at an accounting firm, and I looked around my very small apartment where my child was taking 4 hours worth of naps every day, and I thought, what do I want to do with myself now? Should I take up knitting? I'm not very good at knitting. And then I remembered, I've always loved to write, but I remembered how much I loved writing.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, I'll try writing a novel. So I sat down and I wrote a novel.
Wow. I mean, that's
not in one day.
Hilarious, though.
I know.
I mean, especially. Okay.
I thought, hey, I could do this. It's easier for me than crocheting or knitting.
Or what a nightmare it would have been. You could have started a podcast. Back then. I feel like that would have been the move to start a podcast. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you wrote a novel.
Yeah, so I wrote a novel, and it was this like middle grade portal fantasy. Some kids discover a portal to fairyland in Reykjavik, and that was the thing. So I wrote it, and I sent it to my mom. She's always been my first reader, and I got back this sort of the what's the word for it? Like the typical mom response, which was like, "Yeah, this is great, sweetie." Like,
did the octaves go up even?
The
octaves,
no. No, she was great about it, but she acknowledged that it needed a lot of work. And so I thought, okay, great. Like, that's good. This was not, let's scrap this one. So I threw that one away. And then I had another baby, and then I decided to write another novel.
Just threw it away? Never to see again?
No, I
How many, do you remember the word count?
It was probably like 40 to 50,000. So it was a pretty average.
Yeah, I mean, it is average middle grade, but.
And I spent a lot of time on it. I mean, I did the whole like flashcards with the scenes, and And I wrote it, but I knew it was not something I could publish. And I knew I could do better based on the response I got. So then I wrote another story, which was a paranormal contemporary YA about like a shape-shifting demon type thing that's terrorizing this town, and it ends up being somehow a descendant of Cain. And anyway, so I wrote this.
Okay, so you wrote Stranger Things before there's
Stranger
Netflix,
Things.
yeah.
Yeah, and I sent that one to my mom, and her response was, "It's better." Like that.
Okay.
I think the octaves were lower, not quite so high.
Yeah, right.
Like, this is better. And I think I sent it to my sister also, and she was really great about like honest feedback. Like, this is where I lost interest in your story. So I thought, okay, awesome. This is still not worth much, so I threw that one away.
This is another 40 to 50,000 word.
I think this one was longer. I think it was more like 60,000. And
Okay.
and then and then I was pregnant with my third, and I heard about NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
Which is National Novel Writing Month. Happens in November. It's happening right now, where people just crank out a novel in a month. I think it's 40,000 words. It's kind of like a low novel, 40.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 40,000. And I had this idea for a village trapped in winter and a girl who is stuck there trying to escape and trying to bring down the god that has brought this curse. And so I thought, well, I should do that for NaNoWriMo. So I was like terribly morning sick, but also really wanted to get this novel written. So I just beat it out and got it written. And it was terrible in the first draft, but I sent that one to my mom, and she goes, okay, this one has promise. Like, I think you could work with this one. So then I felt.
So you did another draft.
I did. So I started revising it, and then I started sending it out to some beta readers, some friends of mine, who also gave me really good feedback. And I brainstormed a lot with my sister about the plot and things that were and weren't working. And that
can I know what
year
this is? So what did you do NaNoWriMo?
Okay, I think it was 2014.
Okay.
So it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Because my son was born in 2015. So I did that, and I think that's right. Oh, well, if I'm wrong, I've just
somewhere around there,
lied to
14s, 15s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, your listeners.
And we will find out.
So
you'll be hearing from us.
You'll be doing that trace back through my.
We're small, but we're a passionate few.
Okay, good. Yeah. So then I joined Twitter. So at that point, I thought, okay, this is a book that possibly could go somewhere. And I sort of heard through the grapevine how you get a book published is you have to get an agent first. So, and the place where agents hang out, their water cooler, is Twitter. So I joined Twitter thinking, okay, maybe I'll like make some connections, or
you'll enter the water cooler.
Yeah, I'll just mosey on up to them and see what's going on. Twitter is a weird place, but because of Twitter, I learned about all the writing contests that are going on Twitter. Okay. So there's like Pitch Wars and Pit Mad, and like there's all these hashtags you can follow for writing contests. So I started entering those with The Winter King. And there was one in particular called P2P16, which is Pitch to Publication, where you submit your manuscript, and there's a bunch of freelance editors who will pick their favorite manuscript and work with you on it for a while. And I ended up winning that. So with The Winter King. So I worked with a freelance editor. Her name was Stephanie. She was awesome for a little while. And then that was what I sent out to agents. And I ended up getting an agent and who works at a pretty big New York agency.
Okay. And
so she shopped The Winter King around for a while, and the feedback we got back was strange, because it was like,
okay,
we like this story. It doesn't fit the market at the moment, which was, I mean, that's understandable. Like, I get that they will buy what's selling.
Right.
But really what it came down to, and what we realized, was that the young adult market is predominantly, it's skewed older, right? It's for 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And my protagonist was younger. The story was tamer than a lot of the YA out there. and it just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah. It didn't rhyme with like the John Green vibes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so we tried. I tried revising it a little bit here and there to see if maybe we could make it something that the editors there wanted. But eventually, I'd been talking with Nate and Aaron through this whole process, and I knew that Canon Press was publishing content that I felt like really actually was written for young adult readers, like the real young adult, more 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds. And they thought Winter King would be a great fit with them. So then I took it back from New York and brought it to you guys, and that's where.
So what about the Winter King?
Such a long story.
No, it's totally fine. It is. I mean, it is interesting in terms of, well, so first off, what made the manuscript for Winter King one that you thought, was it just your mom's feedback that you thought I want to do another draft? Because I mean, I don't know if people understand just what it takes to finish a book of
Right.
like passionate people that think their writing is their destiny. It's so hard to finish a book. Like and so for you just to like have written them off and be like, and then another one, and then, so what was it about those other manuscripts that you thought,
Yeah.
like, I don't want to do another manuscript I don't want to do another draft of that
Right.
one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that because so I've written a couple more novels after The Winter King, one of which, again, like for me, and maybe this is not the way everyone works, but I have to write the whole thing to know whether or not it's something I want to work with.
Okay.
Like I think I would have a really hard time starting a manuscript and just
Not finishing
it, because I would always wonder, like, well, is that clay I could have molded into something better?
Right.
And so I really do have to go through the whole process of writing the whole thing before I can take a look at it and just decide, now is it worth spending the next
all the next drafts,
right? Do I love it enough to read it 100 times and work on it? And I didn't really feel that way with the first two that I'd written.
Okay.
And with another one that I wrote after The Winter King, I feel the same way. I wrote it. I wanted to know if I enjoyed writing murder mysteries.
Yeah.
So I wrote a murder mystery, and it was fine, but it's not the type of thing that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get back and like tinker with it and make the plot work or make the characters come alive. So with The Winter King, though, it just stuck. Like, and I think part of it is because there was something deeper going on with The Winter King in terms of, I had just read Till We Have Faces.
Okay.
I think it is. I feel like I'm the odd man out at the party because it is my favorite Lewis book.
Till We Have Faces?
Yes.
Nice.
And
it's a great one.
It is. It's so good. And I think it just ticks all the boxes for me.
Yep.
Like, it's a myth. It's set in a sort of a magical world, but not like wizards. And
sure.
It's like a low fantasy type of world. And the characters are just so real. They just jump off the page at you. And every time I read it, I see more of myself in those characters. And, like, not in a good way. So, like, that uncomfortable, oh, I don't want to be like Orwell, but I am.
Yeah.
So I'd read Till We Have Faces, and I just loved the way he reimagined the Cuban psyche myth. The way he looked for the Christian truth in it and found it, and then reimagined it, like, in a Christian setting.
Yeah.
Like, in a Christian world. And I thought, I want to do that also. Like, that seems like right up my alley. So I started thinking through the myths that I loved, and I thought of the Hades and Persephone myth. And I had already had in my mind this setting of like a Nordic world. And so I figured with that myth, you have built in the seasons, right? You have the mom who curses the earth when her daughter is stolen. And I thought, that's what I want to play with, is that idea of like a vengeful god who's cursing the earth, because we have, again, that nugget of truth. Like, there is a sense in which there was disobedience and a cursed land, right? Yeah. But what would that look like in a Christian setting? And then also I wanted to play with the idea of a culture that hasn't quite let go of the old ways, but is slowly becoming Christian.
Okay.
And so you have that weird mesh of old religion and new faith, and how do we how do we make those work, and what does it look like when it's twisted into like just a rule following overbearing religious society. Anyway, so because I had all these bigger themes that I was excited about and that I loved and was interested in, that was what I think made the story stick more for me, because I knew that I could tinker with the characters and tinker with the plot, but I had this really strong backbone to the story that wasn't ever going to change.
Okay, so you had Till We Have Faces, Hades, and Persephone's. What other kind of influences did you have?
Okay, Megan Whalen Turner, the Thief series.
Okay.
I read those, and so she does similar to Till We Have Faces. She has like that Hellenistic society with like the gods and just amazing world building. So I love her Thief. What is it? It's not a trilogy anymore. What's
I don't know how many there are.
There's 4 of them.
Well,
Quartet.
A quartet, if you will. I like that. The Thief Quartet.
The Thief Quartet. So so that would be another one. I don't know what else.
Okay.
There probably is something. I'm going to go home.
Sure.
And
I'm
going to call you up and finish the conversation.
We'll find out.
The phone.
Okay. So then now you ran those by your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's an author as well, right?
No, she writes. Yes.
She writes.
She's not published yet, but
okay.
She does. She and I both we like to write together.
Okay. Awesome.
We swap manuscripts and critique each other.
What's your relation to Moscow? Like, were you always here? Did you move here?
Okay, so I grew up in Spokane.
Okay.
And I came to Moscow for New St. Andrews.
Okay.
So I graduated in 2009 with my BA.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, so you went to New St. Andrews. Did you go to the Oaks?
I did.
Okay.
I went to the Oaks up through 10th grade.
Okay.
And then I combined my junior and senior year. I did just 1 year so I could come out to NSA earlier.
Wow. You're just in a hurry.
I was in a hurry. My sister was already out here,
okay.
And I wanted to have 2 years with her at college instead of 1. And I took a mishmash of homeschool classes and Running Start community college classes. So
okay.
It was just a hilarious whirlwind year. But yeah, I did that.
Okay, sweet. And then you've been here ever since?
No, actually, we moved away for 2.5 years.
Okay, so you tried to get away.
Yeah,
well, and it just kept pulling you back.
We did not actually try to get away. We wanted to stay. So we got married in 2007, my husband Joel and I, and I graduated in 2009. And then in 2000, he was looking for an accounting job, and he couldn't find one locally. But he got a job offer from Moss Adams in Eugene, Oregon. So we lived in Eugene for 2.5 years.
Okay.
But the whole time I was always like eyes back towards Moscow, wanting to come back here because I love it here. By the time we moved back, we had 2 kids. I knew I wanted to raise my kids here. It's a great town. I love it.
Now you graduated 2009, but you are back in school.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm getting my MFA in creative writing at New St. Andrews. I'm the very first class to go through.
Guinea pig stuff.
Yeah, it's a 2-year program. It's low residency, and I had been looking into MFA programs, so I knew I could write novels. I was doing that for a while, but I felt like I'd kind of hit a point where I love reading writing craft books.
Okay.
Like I'd read all of them. Probably not, because I'm sure there's like hundreds of
Probably
them.
the good ones, though.
Yeah, I'd read a lot of them, and I self-critiqued, and I worked with beta readers, but I felt like I needed more tools in my tool belt in order to kind of take my writing to the next level. So I had been looking into MFA programs. I knew I wanted low residency because I still have 3 little kids, and just the programs that were out there, none of them really fit what I was looking for. For one thing, if I didn't have to travel, I didn't want to. And, well, the experience I had just from looking at and other MFA programs was that a lot of times you are being graded and critiqued, maybe less on the quality of your work, but more on the content of it. Like, is it hitting the talking points? Is
Got it.
do you have your fierce female protagonist? Are, just a lot of stuff that I wanted to really make sure that I was in a program that was looking specifically at my writing, and is it excelling and strong on its own, and not just is she hitting the hot button issues and being really raw and real.
Right. Genuine, authentic.
Yeah. So I was a little wary of the other MFA programs. So when NSA launched theirs, I signed up, and it's been great. I've done it. I'm on year 2 now.
Okay.
So. And it's 3 weeks out of each year. So, and during that week, it's 8 to 5:30. And we do a lot of really uncomfortable things like live writing, where we have to. Nate says, give me a scene of a character who is tired. And then we write a scene with a tired character. And then we read it out loud. And he critiques us to our faces.
Right.
Which is, I guess I like, obviously, critique, since I kept sending it out to my mom. And I really enjoy that, even though it's kind of terrifying. That's been some of the most valuable feedback, because it makes you think in the moment about every decision you're making, which now when I approach a paragraph or a chapter, I'm thinking about every decision that I'm making.
Right. Because you just make those anyway.
Right. You are making the decisions, but a lot of times I think we make them haphazardly.
Passively.
Yeah, passively. We're like, okay, our character walks into a room, let's make the walls blue. But to actually sit there and think, okay, what color do I actually want the walls? And it should have some meaning or importance, or do I even need to describe them?
Right.
Can I cut that entirely and describe something else that pertains to the character and that describes the character themselves?
Right.
So
those live writing. So I went to grad school at New St. Andrews, and almost all the classes, it was before the MFA, so all the classes I took are now in the MFA. So the few times that I took Nate and did those kinds of things, you always make the mistakes that you would make.
Yes.
Like, it's a very personal thing, and Nate has always been very good and very insightful where it most hurts. Where
He's
it hurts.
like a heat-seeking missile for your flaws.
He's just so cheerful about finding those.
I know. Right.
So I would continually find that I'm failing in the same way, and that's such a Jake thing to
Yes.
do. Anyway, it was really helpful, and I was always shocked at how it was just everywhere you go, there you are. So I could go home, and my flaws on the page were just flaws over there too, just not anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Which makes it hard doing the read out loud, but it makes you infinitely better.
Right.
And I always found 1 week later, imagining back to that live writing session and being like, wow, I feel like years ago that I would never make that again. Or,
or
it's so
at least
funny.
When I'm making it, I realize that I'm
that you're doing it.
And so then you can go back and be like, there it is. There's the thing I always do. And I also think that writers, a lot of times we just need to develop thicker skin, because we are prone to take it personally. And that was another thing when I was looking at the MFA programs and hearing people talk about them, and they're like, we would leave the class and just cry because it was so painful to hear your work critiqued like that. And I thought, I don't want to be a part of that setting. That sounds terrible. Like,
right.
you should be thankful that people are pointing this out. And the only way you're going to get better is through someone pointing out what you did wrong. And most of the time we are completely blind to it ourselves until someone points it out. And don't we all want to be better? And also I think that that's something where, even with a debut, hopefully by the time I've written 10 more books, there will be things that I'll see in my debut and think, I could have done that better.
And why didn't Brian catch it?
Yeah, come on, Brian. But I think that that's totally fine. And it's not that I won't be proud of the Winter King anymore.
Right.
I will be proud that I've gotten further in my career, and that I now hopefully my characters are more well-rounded or more fleshed out. So we should just have that humility of realizing that none of us at 16 is going to write the next great American novel.
Right.
And we shouldn't.
It really is a funny exercise, because it seems like you would never be so openly going about your life and be like, and ask others for input,
Right.
So like I just spent this day doing this. Does anybody have any input on like my attitude during
You
this
want to
whole
talk
thing?
about this? Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always our culture loves the young prodigy, right? So there's this big thing in publishing with like the new 22-year-olds New York Times bestseller, right? Which, I mean, yes, it's quite possible that there are 22-year-olds writing amazing novels out there. I was not at 22. I was not writing anything worth publishing. But just this idea that somehow there's like a timestamp on your career, your success, that you can only say you've made it as an author if you're like writing these amazing books in your 20s. Whereas I think a lot of people, as you gain more life experience and you gain just more skills, you're going to write better novels the older you get, which is what's so great about this process. It's not like an NBA star where you've got like a certain period of time and then you're done.
It is what I found to be the things that I love the most are always, most of it is because of the kind of person who's writing it, or it's just they are that kind of person and I want to imitate that. Or, with Richard Wilbur's poetry, I think about that all the time. Like, I just love him.
Yeah.
And it just so comes out in his work. And as I like start describing his poetry to somebody, or a particular, what I love about this poem, I'm like now describing his attributes or his characteristics. And anyway, so I think that's what makes it tough and great. So obviously somebody who has done a whole life and lived it well and winsomely, and the rest,
right?
It's a good chance that it's going to come out in their prose too.
Yeah, it is true that it's like it is a particular extension of you.
Yeah,
and so that's another thing where when you start getting reviews in, you have to work hard not to be like, "How dare you insult me like this?"
Yeah. Always, every single time I would get the professor remarks, or I forget what they're called, but basically at the end of every class, I would always know that whatever Nate's saying about what I wrote down absolutely applies, or it always would hurt. This is absolutely a life critique. I was like,
no, it's true. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I think I with Nate, usually the critique I get is, I'm trying to think of the words he used.
I'm glad you're agreeing, because otherwise it was just me.
Just
Nate was just applying.
No. It had something to do with like systematic to a fault or something. Like I just and the more I thought about that, I was like, that does in fact describe me. Like, I am very much a point A, point B, point C person, and that can come out in my writing like a little too much. So I have to work to hide like my train of thought, or hide the progression of things. And so, but then I thought about it more, and that is exactly how I am.
Now you went through like several variations of Winter King, right? As you were like shopping it out.
Right.
So which so talk about that, and then how did you decide which one to go with for us?
Okay, yeah. When we first sent it out in its first derivation, I had aged up Cora. She was still 16, but I had written more of her relationship. The romance in it was stronger, and not in any way that like I'm not proud of, but just that it was more.
It was aged up.
Yeah, it was aged up, and it was fine, and I thought it worked well. But then what happened after we worked on that for a while, and then didn't hear back from a lot of editors, or heard back with a no. We decided to make it more specifically middle grade, because when you're playing the New York publishing game, you have to be very specific. Like if it's going to be middle grade, then the character has to be 12. They can't be 14. They have to be 12. And so then I aged Cora down. I made her 12. I reworked the manuscript for a while that way, which meant, of course, that I took out the romance completely, and I had to change some of the other relationships here and there. And I actually quite liked it that way. I think I liked it better that way than the older young adult. So we sent it out that way again for a shorter amount of time before I pulled it and took it back from her. But the thing with so once I knew I was sending it to Canon and I could do what I want, which was just a huge relief, I put her back up to 16 because I felt like, well, for one thing, I wanted to write a story, again, like I was saying, to for 14, 15, 16-year-old girls who are going into the library right now and trying to figure out what to read, because maybe they've finished middle grade, but the stuff that's out there in YA land is a dark and perilous
Right.
place. And so
And usually post-apocalyptic.
yeah, with a love triangle.
Right.
And so I knew I wanted it to have, I also felt like the romance really serves the plot. And in terms of Cora, she's coming of age. She is trying to figure out her place in this society, and also what loyalty looks like to a whole bunch of different people, to her family, to her friends, to someone who, you might end up marrying. Like that, all of that, I felt like I lost it when I went to middle grade. And the stakes just are much higher when you're dealing with
those relationships,
older relationships. So I was really glad that I was able to put it back up to the YA age group, but I didn't bump it all the way up because I felt like some of the scenes that I added when we sent it out to New York were kind of superfluous, but just there to sort of give it that place marker of like, this is YA.
So that it's back.
Now it's back. I feel like it sort of landed in the middle, which is where I wanted it to be anyways.
Okay.
And I'm so happy with where it is. I feel like it just feels like it sits very comfortably where it landed.
Okay. So now one of the things, talking with Forrest, who's also in your class, usually I have like an explicit, we don't talk about Forrest on the podcast, but one of the things I know is he has to read 25 books outside of the genre of the book he's writing for the MFA.
Yes.
What books are you reading that are outside of the genre?
Ooh, okay, so I'm currently reading A Gentleman in Moscow. Oh, let me try that again. A Gentleman in Moscow.
Yeah, because it's Russia.
Because it's Russia, not Moscow, Idaho. I think it's Amor Towles.
Yeah, I forget his name.
I'm not sure how to pronounce that, which is just fantastic.
Okay.
It's a story of a count who is sentenced to live the rest of his life in a hotel in Bolshevik Russia. And so I'm reading that one. I just finished The Remains of the Day by Ishiguro.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to reading Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay.
I just blanked on her name. Man, it'll come to me. Can't believe I blanked on her name because I've read like everything else she's written. She wrote the Crestomancy series. Diana Wynne Jones.
Okay.
By Diana Wynne Jones. And yeah, I have a bunch of random ones. I just went through, I have the largest, most never-ending TBR pile. And so I went through and I picked the ones, mostly I picked ones that are not middle grade or young adults, because we're supposed to be writing outside of that or reading outside of that our particular genre. So I went with a lot of the ones that I have just never read, like Persuasion by Jane Austen. I've never read it, so
it is a sweet opportunity to knock those out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have some weird ones. Not weird. There's some high fantasy that I've wanted to read, like The Name of the Wind. I don't know. I have no idea whether be good or not. But I tried to pick ones that are super popular because they are popular for a reason.
Sure.
Yeah.
So they were basically not YA because you are writing YA.
Mm-hmm.
What about YA is something that you want to like work on and tinker with and spend all that time doing? What is it about the genre that you like?
I think some of it is sentimental. So that was the period of time where I felt, and I think a lot of kids feel this way, like your writing or your reading just takes off and you're suddenly, it's less that your mom is picking you up books from the library to read, but you are going and exploring, like figuring out what it is that you love and exploring different genres. So I just remember that particular time of feeling awe when I would read a book and just love it so much and think, I want to do that. I want to give that same awe and delight. And kids in particular, I think, love to binge read. My daughter does this already. She's 9, but she stayed up way too late reading The Winter King, and I could not reprimand her for it because it was my book. And so, but it just is, it's a really satisfying feeling to write something that someone just is like, it's like a page turner.
Yeah.
It's gripping.
Do you ever have, so when you read something like The Gentleman in Moscow, or do you ever think like, oh, I would, if you ever want to do a jag outside, or do you ever have temptations?
My biggest temptation right now is to write a high fantasy novel
Okay.
or series.
Yeah, okay.
Which, and I just, mainly because we had Tolkien, right?
Yeah.
It was like the start of this incredible genre. And then I think, where have we gone?
Yeah, not good.
We've got
Nowhere good,
Game
probably.
of Thrones.
Yeah.
And it's dominated by a lot of guys who
Or putting guy stuff in
are
books.
putting guy stuff in,
Yeah.
and it's like their descriptions of women are a little less than inspiring. And
Sure.
And so I feel like we could, as Christians, could totally reclaim that, and we should, and why haven't we? But I don't think I'm not a good enough writer yet to do that, and I don't want to give it a shot until I feel like I could do it justice.
Okay.
But yeah, sure. I mean, reading something like Gentleman in Moscow, it's so, it's just, that book in particular is delightful to read, and I love finding a book where you feel like the author just loves to be there, right? Like they are enjoying themselves, and their love of the word is so strong that they've written this, I don't know, it's a pretty big book. I think
it is big.
It's a long one, and I'm reading the large print version because that was all I could find on short notice. So it's like 700 pages long.
Wow. You're reading the big one. Yeah.
But yeah, so you read that and it's hard not to. It's the same way, right, with teachers. When you have a teacher who clearly loves their subject, you want to do that. You're like, yes, I am going to be a mathematician because my math teacher just showed me how much love he or she had for it. So whenever I read a adult novel, like a literary work that just is so satisfying, I think maybe I'll do this someday. I have time, right?
Yeah, right. You have all the time in the world. Yeah. Yeah, I think what I loved, it struck me just hearing the assignment, but I think so many people get bogged down by their own tastes and think it just gets so, I don't know, musty. Or, I don't know, it's refreshing, and I think it'll make everybody a better writer.
Yeah, I think you can tell when an author only reads in their lane, and because we just recycle the tropes we've read and the phrases we've heard. This is why you have things like everyone using the phrase, she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding, because that's like one person did that in YA literature, and suddenly everyone is letting out breaths they didn't know they were holding.
That's
I swear
so
it
funny.
happens all the time.
That's so funny.
I know.
Okay, that's hilarious.
So yeah, and I think you do. I mean, that was the whole point of the NSA education, right? Is that you to train people to be copious and well-rounded, and not just focused on one particular genre or style, because it is going to come out pretty two-dimensional.
Totally. Well, Christine, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
So go get Winter King, hardcover, beautiful cover.
Yeah, Megan and Koviak, shout out to her.
Yeah.
It was
crazy great art.
So beautiful. And that's something I cannot for the life of me draw or paint.
Have you tried? You like it?
I have tried.
Okay.
And this was something in high school I thought to myself that I should be an artist. And so I really tried. I bought a whole bunch of drawing tutorials and I watched YouTube videos and I tried, and I was just horrible. And so I set that aside. And so I'm always so impressed by people who can just visualize something like that and make it look so incredible.
So you just get a friend. It's like it's like the boat thing. You
find yourself a Meg.
Yeah.
But not her, because she's mine.
Right. She is busy.
She's busy working.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.